All right, so starting from the left side of the vehicle, we're going to have our memory settings that are located on the left-hand side of the door. So if you've had any previous Porsches, typically you'd be using this to link it to each individual key fob, so you could have each your own memory. In this car, the best way to consider these, you're going to have your set 1, 2, and 3 buttons. These are going to be more like guest profiles, so they're going to be remembering your seating position, steering wheel and mirrors, and that's going to be it. As far as your kind of individualized settings go, those are all going to be set to a driver profile, which you're going to create by linking your My Porsche account to the vehicle. That though we're going to dive into a little bit later when we go over the PCM in the vehicle. Coming over here to the lights on the vehicle, essentially, which is getting pretty common nowadays, we're just going to leave the setting on auto. This is going to take care of everything for us. If you are ever going to have to pull over on a foggy road, that's what this very bottom button is going to do. So that's going to turn on our fog lights. In this vehicle, especially with how good LEDs are nowadays, there's not anything that you're going to actually have to do. All that's going to do is turn on the side markers on the rear of the vehicle. And that way, if anyone's following you in the fog, you know exactly where the side of the vehicle is and can see where you've pulled over to. The upper button is going to be your parking lights, and the auto function is going to be taking care of that, as well as your manual low beam and driving lights right there. Coming over to our steering wheel controls, starting on the left-hand side of our steering wheel, we're going to have our voice control button right here. Two ways to use the voice control button. The first way is just by tapping and clicking it. Tapping it once is going to bring up the Porsche version of the voice control. That is, I guess I should say, has been improved drastically, especially with there being an embedded SIM card in the vehicle. So for one, the car does the voice recognition. The more you use that voice control feature, the better it's going to start working, the better it'll recognize how you speak. And then from there, while you're using that as well, it's going to be drawing from online sources. So if you are kind of questing for a destination, you don't have the exact address off the top of mind, you're often able to just say the building. It can pull from Google Maps and bring that up for you. So it works very well. If you're using Apple CarPlay as an alternative or plugged in Android Auto, you can hold it down instead to bring up Siri, for example. And then using Siri, you can just use it as you typically would on your phone to search up anything that you'd use for Apple CarPlay functions, whether it be Google Maps, asking Siri questions, anything like that. Besides the voice control button, we're going to have volume for the car. Scroll up to turn up the volume, down to go turn it down. Clicking it is going to mute the vehicle. Just to the right of that, we're going to have this diamond button here. That's going to be a programmable button. That we'll get to when we dive more into your settings, but we do have some recommended settings for that button there. This button here is the recuperation feature for the vehicle. It always defaults as off when you start the car, but clicking it, and you can see the indicator come up here on our dash. That's going to tell us that it's on. While that's on, if you back off the accelerator on the vehicle, rather than coasting, the vehicle is going to start slowing down, and that resistance that's providing the slowing down feeling, that is going to be recharging up your electric battery so we can prolong the range of the vehicle. And then while it is off, which you can see right now, you're going back off the accelerator, and now it's going to coast for what feels like forever. Really, it's just personal preference, what you like more. Personally, I really like it off because it provides a very, very smooth drive feel. Whereas maybe if you're driving in an area where there's lots of elevation change or there's lots of stop and go traffic, you'll have it on just to recoup that extra energy into the vehicle. Coming down here to the middle of our steering wheel, you can't really see here, but if you feel just between your two bottom spokes here with your finger, you're going to have a button. If you go ahead and click it, it's going to turn on our heating steering wheel. And if you click it again, it's going to deactivate the heated steering wheel. Coming to the right-hand side of the steering wheel here, going to have a few different buttons. So starting with the phone functions, clicking that's going to either answer or hang up a phone call. Coming to the right function, you're going to have this little arrow here. And if we go look at the instrument cluster here, clicking it is going to go between our 3 different menus on the instrument cluster. So right now we've got the far right one selected. If we click this again, this is going to be going to the middle screen, and clicking it again, it's going to be going to the left-hand screen. From there, just coming back down to our right-hand side again, we're going to have the scroller here, and we're going to be able to scroll through that to decide what we have in each of those screens. So coming up for an example, we have that left-hand screen selected. We can go anywhere from our different assistance systems. Maybe we want our traffic signs up there for when we're driving. G-force, If you like some sporty driving and you want to see how hard you're accelerating in any direction, you can see that there. And for example, if we click into this further, we're even going to be able to go see our maximum G-force we've achieved or reset those statistics right there. Continuing through, PDCC, so this is going to be our dynamic chassis control. So that's your anti-roll stabilization. So you're going to be able to see where that is, where you're cornering and how hard it's reacting. And then coming to the very bottom here, just an example, you'll be able to pull up tire info and all of that. Coming to the middle screen again. So a few different options here. So for example, it's going to default to the power meter, but let's say you want a mini map on here for your navigation instructions. You're going to be able to pull that up versus an extended map, which is going to be the entire screen there. And then let's say you just want a stealth view, you don't want all that information in front of you. You can kind of black out the entire cockpit right there, and you'll just have the speedometer up in front of you. But for now, just go put it back up to our power meter. Coming to the right-hand screen, so you're going to have a few other options here. So starting from the bottom, you're just going to have information on the vehicle. That's going to be your basic driver's info. So kind of date, state of charge. So you can see the car right now we're in, it's got 67% left on it. Battery temperature below that. That is very important for charging the car, especially if you're putting the car on a level 3 charger. And then below that, you're going to have the voltage of your small voltage battery. So that's going to be different from your high voltage one, which I guess you can see right here, 270 kilometers of range. You'll have the two different ones in the vehicle. Coming upwards, you're going to have media, which is just what's playing in the car right now. You're going to have your different drive modes. We're going to dive into this in a little bit more depth later on. You're going to have sport chrono. Let's say you're wanting to do any time trials or laps or record how fast you can get back and forth from work. That's where you can do that. And then you'll be able to reference those time trials in the PCM later on. And then just different trip info, see how efficient you're driving. And then let's say you're wanting to pull up some navigation info. Right now we're just sitting in our showroom, so it's telling us we're off-road, but typically I'd tell you where you are on the road. Next to your steering wheel, in the back is going to be your signal lights, bumping back and forth right there, left and right, as well as your lights. Pressing forward is going to turn on your automatic high beams, which you can see with that indicator there, the high beam sign with the A in it. As long as you're driving over 65 kilometers an hour and there aren't street lights in your area, your high beams will come up automatically. And whenever the car does recognize a vehicle approaching you, or if you're coming upon another vehicle from behind, it is going to dim on and off those high beams for you. This is going to be your cruise control and assistance system settings. To turn it on, you're going to be clicking the side button right here. That's going to activate your cruise control. Pressing away from you to set or increase your speed once it has been set. Pulling towards you to slow down the vehicle. Going downwards to cancel. And going up to resume. If you do have adaptive cruise control on your vehicle, you're able to set that following distance with this sub lever right here. So bumping up to be further away from the vehicle in front of you. Going downwards to be closer to the vehicle in front of you. You're also going to have this mode button right here. Depending on the amount of assistance systems you have in your vehicle, you can click this and then use the thumb scroll on the steering wheel to kind of toggle between your different drive modes. Then clicking the side button right here to deactivate them all again right here. Coming to the right of the steering wheel, we're going to have our windshield wipers. So to start, just along the right here by my finger, you're going to have off, intermittent, low, and high. That's going to be the height of the stock. So a lot of people I find confuse that with your middle lever right here, which actually just has to do with wiper sensitivity to the rain. So that has to do with your auto mode. One click is going to put our windshield wipers on intermittent, which is the same as the auto mode. And going up further, we'll put it into either low or high for if it's really raining, pulling towards you to wipe off the front of the front windshield and spray it off. Last thing in front of the steering wheel we'll go over here is going to be our different driving modes. You're going to have this little toggle right here. Spinning it is going to change the different modes for you. We're always going to default to the normal mode in the vehicle. Spinning our mode selector to the right is going to put the car into sport mode. That's just making the car more responsive. And then on top of that, essentially it's going to be stiffening up our chassis slightly. The car's going to have PASM, which is your active sport suspension in it. And then as well, it's going to change a few things on the drivetrain. So first of all, whenever you are starting, rather than defaulting to the second gear on the rear axle, you're going to be starting on the first gear on the rear axle. And as you get up to speed, you are going to experience one gear change around 90 kilometers an hour. Coming to Sport Plus mode by going to the right one more. Often, especially in a combustion engine vehicle, I kind of describe this as a track mode. For one now, the vehicle has been lowered to the lowest position with air suspension. That's just going to give us a lower center of gravity, better ride feel. It's also going to stiffen up our chassis, so our sport suspension to the firmest setting, kind of reduce the body roll in the vehicle. And then on top of that, the actual response to the accelerator is going to be greater as well. So the car's going to feel a little bit more lively. If you're wanting to do launch control in a Taycan, you don't have to be in Sport Plus mode like you would be on any combustion vehicle or combustion engine variant that has Sport Chrono. As long as you're in Sport Plus mode, doesn't matter. You're just going to go left foot on the brake, right foot, pedal to the metal and hold that down there. After about a second, it's going to pop up and tell us that the launch control is ready on our instrument cluster right there, and you can just drop the brake and keep holding down that accelerator and off you go. Continuing on with the mode selector, all the way to the right now, we're going to have an individual mode. So once you've been driving the car around and you've kind of found out which settings you like, maybe which ones you don't, you can program those to kind of customize individual mode. Going the opposite direction on the vehicle now, we're going to rotate to range mode. And range mode is going to be a little bit different for everything else. Typically day to day, you don't tend to be driving around in range mode all the time. It's more for if you just kind of prolong and maximize your range for if you're going on a road trip, or if you find yourself in a sticky situation and you are worried about that range and where you can charge the vehicle. Essentially going into range mode is going to do a few different things. So the first thing it's going to do is going to put your kind of climb control and auxiliaries on eco mode to save some power there. And then on top of that, once you do get up to speed in the vehicle and you're driving, it's going to switch from an all-wheel drive vehicle to a front-wheel drive vehicle only. So having that only one motor active is going to be saving a lot of power for the vehicle, and it's going to bump up your range accordingly. Of course, if you do need that power, if you go put the accelerator all the way to the floor, that rear motor will become active again immediately. So you don't really have to worry about having a lack of power in this mode. If you do need it to get yourself out of a situation, it's still going to be there. And the last thing I'll mention too, if you're ever on range mode, depending where you drive and how you drive, there's going to be a maximum speed limit while in range mode. I'd highly recommend, especially depending where you're driving, bumping up that maximum speeds to something that suits kind of where you're driving a little bit better. For example, we're in Calgary right here. The speed limit on Highway 1's 110 kilometers an hour. I'd recommend bumping it to at least 120 kilometers an hour so you can keep up with traffic and it's a little bit more safe that way. Coming to the far right of our steering wheel, we're going to have our traction control. If you want to take this off so you can go do some donuts in a snowy parking lot, you're going to hold this down for 5 seconds until it beeps at us and disables. As you can see here on the instrument cluster, it's always going to default to on again when you turn on the vehicle, or to get it back on after you're done doing your donuts, you're going to click that and it's going to be active again. To the right of that, you're going to have your PASM button. So this is your sport suspension essentially, and you're going to be able to click it to stiffen up your chassis to various levels. Clicking it, it's going to put it onto the sport chassis. So it's going to be slightly stiffer here to reduce body roll. Clicking it again, it's going to stiffen it up to the Sport Plus mode, which is the firmest setting. And once again, that's going to eliminate that body roll even further. Below that is going to be the Smart Lift function. So let's say coming up to either a steep driveway or there's a big speed bump and you're worried about the clearance on your vehicle, clicking this is going to go put it into lift mode. So it's going to raise it to its highest level. Also now, this is going to be GPS based. So that's the Smart Lift function. So let's say each time you have to go into your garage, you need to put the Smart Lift on so you have enough clearance. When you click that, the car is going to ask if you want to save the location. If you click yes, it'll save it to GPS coordinate. And each time you drive by it, it's automatically going to raise up your vehicle for you, so you don't have to be clicking that button every single time. You don't actually have to physically go and drop the car back down afterwards. If let's say you're putting it on just to get over that speed bump and continuing driving afterwards, as soon as you exceed 30 kilometers an hour, the car is just going to lower back down to its regular drive height. Below that is going to be our second programmable button. So any of the diamonds will be those features. This, you're able to set in the PCM of the vehicle, same as the diamond button we went over on the steering wheel. So eventually we'll be getting to that shortly. And then lastly, this here is our gear selector. Essentially, as long as your foot's on the brake, you can come up to this, bump downwards to go into drive, upwards to go into reverse, and the park button to get the car back into park. And lastly, of course, once we're done everything here and we want to either turn off the vehicle, or if we're hopping back in and starting it, we're going to have our start button just on the left of the vehicle. Holding this down for 3 seconds is going to power everything off for us.